Imagine a single melody stretching across a subcontinent, uniting over 1 billion voices in exactly 52 seconds. For India, that melody is Jana Gana Mana. But a national anthem is rarely a simple song. It acts as a strict boundary line, a tool for a state to define exactly who belongs and who is willing to comply. These 52 seconds have sparked intense conflicts. They fueled rumors of colonial subservience, triggered debates over shifting borders, and ignited Supreme Court legal fights over forced patriotism. To understand how modern India wrestles with its own identity and democratic values, you have to look closely at the fierce battles fought over this specific piece of music. This is Rabindranath Tagore, the Nobel laureate who composed Jana Gana Mana in 1911. He wrote it in highly Sanskrit-influenced Bengali, originally intending it to be a monotheistic hymn for a religious movement known as the Brahmo Samaj. When the song debuted in Calcutta, the British Indian press created a massive misunderstanding. Newspapers reported that Tagore had written the hymn specifically to welcome and praise this man, King George V. Looking at this 1937 letter from Tagore, we see his fierce pushback against that narrative. He clarified that the Lord of Destiny mentioned in his lyrics was a timeless spiritual guide for India, stating bluntly that it could never be George V, George VI, or any other George. That early misinterpretation left a lasting mark. From its very first public performance, the anthem was stripped of its spiritual roots and reframed as a perpetual test of political loyalty. Look at this photograph of Indian nationalist Subhas Chandra Bose. Decades before independence, while Bose was in Nazi Germany in 1942 seeking alliances, he selected this song to represent India. A German radio orchestra played it publicly for the very first time as an anthem. 8 years later, we see Jawaharlal Nehru addressing the Constituent Assembly in 1950. As the newly independent republic was forming, the Assembly officially adopted the first stanza of Tagore's hymn as the national anthem. This map of pre-partition India shows why the song's lyrics immediately created a geopolitical headache. Tagore specifically named border regions like Punjab, Sindh, Gujarat, and Maratha to represent the vast geographic scope of the subcontinent. Watch what happens when the 1947 partition line is drawn. The province of Sindh is now completely isolated within the borders of the newly formed nation of Pakistan. Singing that specific word today means praising a territory that belongs to a geopolitical rival. These refugees arriving in India represent the human reality of that partition. Millions of Sindhi people lost their homeland, yet their culture and legacy remained deeply embedded in the new Indian Republic. Every time the anthem is sung, a post-partition country is reciting a historical map that no longer matches its actual political borders. Inside the Supreme Court of India, these historical debates eventually turned into a pressing legal question. Can a democratic government compel its citizens to show respect for a song? In a landmark 1986 case, school authorities in Kerala expelled a group of students belonging to the Jehovah's Witnesses. The children had stood up respectfully during the anthem, but their religious beliefs prohibited them from actually singing it. The court ruled in favor of the students. They established that standing in silence showed proper respect, setting a clear legal precedent that the state could not override an individual's religious conscience by forcing them to sing. Yet 30 years later, that protection collided with a new judicial order. In 2016, the Supreme Court mandated that every cinema hall in the country play the national anthem before screening a film, expecting doors to be locked to ensure total compliance. The fallout spilled into the aisles. Patrons who chose not to stand or couldn't stand were bullied, harassed, and in several cases arrested under laws meant to prevent insults to national honor. By legally enforcing a display of patriotism, the 2016 mandate actively manufactured division among citizens, turning a song meant to unify the public into a rigid compliance test. The tension became so acute that the Supreme Court ultimately reversed its own cinema mandate. One justice noted that citizens shouldn't be forced to wear their patriotism on their sleeves just to watch a movie. That defense of individual liberty mirrors the philosophy of the man who wrote the anthem. Rabindranath Tagore spent much of his life warning against the dangers of blind, rigid nationalism. In 1919, after British troops massacred unarmed civilians at Jallianwala Bagh, Tagore famously renounced his British knighthood in sheer protest. The fact that his composition has endured a century of scrutiny, partition, and legal battles is a testament to its real strength. The anthem remains powerful because it survives this democratic stress testing, proving more resilient when chosen rather than when forced by the state. Jana Gana Mana serves as a perpetual measure of India's democratic soul, a 52-second test that the nation must define and pass every time the music starts.